Welcome back, everybody. Very excited about this week's podcast. We are going to talk about women in mining and women empowerment and diversity and community work. And I'm excited because it's a mixture of the women, the ladies that have been on the podcast over the last 18 months. And you will enjoy this because it's a diverse conversation about how do we diversify, how do we empower women, what do we need to do to make our women in mining shine in the industry that has been dominated by men for so long. Thanks for listening this week. Thanks for watching and enjoy this one. You're going to have fun. Enjoy your mining. If you can describe it in one word, it's influence. And you've just done that. You said it's all about that influence, about inspiring and getting people to, buy into that vision, be part of that vision. You've also talked about inclusion. I've heard you talk about inclusion before. How important is that for you in terms of leadership?
For me, it is very important because ultimately in your team, you don't want just yes-sayers or people that think alike.
Yes.
You want diversity. And
Yes.
most important, when you have, because that's the only way you can have people that does not think or only see, look from the same microscope or the same lens as you, but people who would think differently. And ultimately, you would have a lot more options to choose from rather than just having the limited options to choose from. And the limited options that you have may not ultimately be the best one. So for you to arrive to a best decision, you need to have a variety of options, and that would come from your diverse team. Now, that is step one. And once you've got the diversity, the second part is inclusivity, is making sure that your diverse team provide input. And it's very important. Introvert does not mean that the person or a reserved person does not mean that they don't have great ideas. It's again, making sure that everybody is included in the decision-making or they air their opinion. So those are the few points I would cover in terms of diversity and inclusivity, and both are very important or relevant towards leadership.
Yeah, we had the privilege of working together. For some of our listeners that don't know, we are ex-colleagues in a way, and we've been in a very close relationship for a long time. And the one thing, just for our listeners, that Sheron has taught me is to make sure everybody's got that voice and balance the conversation and balance all the facts coming to the table. And I remember that one of my mistakes, and we said this podcast is there that we can share with you in a vulnerable way our mistakes and the things we've done wrong. And I can remember clearly the one very tough conversation that you and I had once about the one-sided view of things and just taking evidence, which was good evidence, facts on one side, and just make that, the overwhelming reality for everything. And you clearly helped me to balance all the points of view so that, you can make a better decision from all the facts. And where did that come from? How did you land up with, just this wonderful leadership concept?
I think it's the type of person I am. I'm driven towards being fair. And being fair, you need to ensure that you listen to all parties involved and making sure that you come to an optimal decision, or at least the outcome should be accommodating to both. And it's never a win for the one party, but it should be a balance of decision there. Because you may need to take some from the one party and others from the other, and others from the other party, and then you find a common ground which is best for the team.
And what would you say to somebody that is there, and as you say, you speak on behalf of maybe 10 or 15 women, but you're the one that's actually raising the issue and you're being singled out and victimized to an extent. because you're the one singling or voicing what everybody else is thinking. What would you say to a younger version of yourself that are struggling with the same issues?
I think raise your concern, but also maybe find the right way to do it. My advice may sound like I'm policing the victim, but I think what I've learned for myself, because you also don't want to run the risk of being labeled an activist, like you are just problematic in all situations, because then your opinion also might not be counted as highly as it should, because maybe you're just seen as a problem. Rather find the correct way to voice that opinion, because it is necessary. We need to do that, because if you don't raise your voice, then nothing changes, and someone needs to stand up and then stand for the others that are maybe not as able, because our personalities are different as well. So yes, if you are one of those people that is able to speak up, I would suggest you speak up, but also do it in such a manner that your message is well received. Because if you also comes out always guns blazing, then your message may not be well received, and then you are doing more harm than good to your cause. So raise it, but maybe raise it with considering all angles, and if possible, raise the issue with having solutions in mind, and then be part of the solution. So that it's not just to say that, oh, this is wrong, and then you walk away from it. This is wrong. How can we fix it? And if possible, back it up with stats and evidence, and maybe examples of what others are doing, because most times something that you're trying to do probably has been attempted somewhere else, and then you can give that solution to the person that needs to affect the change.
Oh, that's really good. It's not always that easy from a women perspective. So were there times that you encountered issues that you can advise a younger version of yourself to say, you know, this is what I've learned in this male dominant world. I love the no nonsense approach. That's a good learning. You know, try and fit into that, because it is quite simple. It is quite straightforward. There's no beating around the bush. But what would you advise somebody in filling those younger boots?
I think something that I would advise a younger version of myself is really to be aware of perceptions, or how you are perceived, because that is quite important, and you need to be willing to adapt. And I will explain at the risk of being a bit too practical, but let me perhaps give a practical example, then it's easier to understand.
Mining
so
is
if we take the mining environment, we have a lot of situations where you would be in a group. You would have a meeting, a larger kind of meeting, sometimes meetings outside in the mine or in the plant, and you have, for example, a safety talk at the start of the morning. And as a woman, your natural tendency would be to speak softly, or sometimes to speak in a very high pitch. Even after many years working in my career, I still have to focus on it. So that is your natural way of speaking, which there's nothing wrong with that. But if you are in that environment and you would speak softly, literally people will not hear you. And the message that you try to bring across, they will either get halfway or not properly. They may not respond properly to what you request. And some of the communication will get lost. And in a quite a worst case scenario, they would even perceive you to be not very confident. So if you are in that environment or that situation, it's very important that you must really speak up, speak loudly, and project your voice. And then they can hear you and they can respond very well to your message. And it's really simple to do. And that's what I mean by you must be willing to adapt. It's not difficult to do. But the very important part is you must realize how you are perceived. So that's the part that sometimes you don't actually realize, because, you know, in your natural way is not to speak very loudly and project very clearly. But once you are aware of that, it's something that you can very easily do, and it makes it just makes it easier for working together. So I think that would be something as a practical advice that I would give to younger women or any women actually working in this kind of industry. And then for me personally, something that makes it why I enjoy this industry, which you can hopefully also hear from my voice this morning, but I really enjoy the kind of work. So I also, enjoy putting on an overall and getting into the plant. I like the technical challenge of it. I like working with the people. So that part is a passion for me. And then, you need to just work on at it. So there's a book that I've read quite a bit later in my career, but for young women, I would really recommend. There's a book, Grit, Passion and Perseverance by Angela Duckworth, which I think gives really a good picture of what it takes to continue. And it starts off with having that passion. So if you have the passion, the perseverance part is something you can work on. If you don't really have the aptitude or the liking for the industry, then I think it will be very challenging. And something that is important for me especially is also to maintain the overview. So often when we work on mines, you are somewhere there, as we mentioned, on a remote site, in a kind of faraway place. And the product that you see at the end of the mine is a truck that enters a long road going somewhere. So what you are doing, you actually never see what it gets used for. So when I was working for the zinc mine, you know very well, you produce zinc in an ingot form, and it leaves by truck. But you don't realize where that zinc goes because it's shipped off, it's sold on the international market. But in what you do, you really have a contribution to what happens in the world. Zinc is used in multiple industries. It's used for corrosion protection. That has a long way that it goes towards sustainability and how long you can use material. But you just working there somewhere on a site, you wouldn't necessarily see that.
Yes.
And I think that is a part of the industry where when you can see that bigger picture, it really, makes you also understand your role in achieving that bigger purpose. So for every one of the mines and every one of the minerals that's mined, you can really get that story that, makes it worthwhile being there somewhere on some site trying to get something working and keeping it working.
If we as men have to create that perfect environment for, call it professionals like yourself in industries so whether it's an operating plant or an operating mine or just a facility, a factory. I mean, we're talking about business here. It's not just mining, and you have to create that perfect environment as men. What would you tell men to think about in terms of leading an organization, but they've got women coming back after giving birth? What are the sort of secret 3 or 4 things that you can create that environment where you can still thrive and be a mother, a young mother, new mother, or second child?
I think the one thing is actually be aware of what you say around a new mother. For instance, Christo, I've had comments being made that, females come into, how do we actually employ females? And how many females do we actually employ? Because there's always going to be this issue about females having babies and they're going to be on maternity leave, so we can't take too many females. I mean, for me, listening to a comment like that before,
I was one of those that made those comments as well. I must tell you, I'm being honest. I was guilty of that at one stage, for sure.
But even for me, Christo, I didn't think about that because I wasn't a mum. I did not know. So I would just brush those comments aside. But being a new mum and hearing comments like that, it hit me hard because it's not like that's a natural progression of life. Females have babies, but we don't want to be looked at like this baby manufacturing plant.
Exactly.
Coming to work just to have babies. We're coming to work to progress. We're coming to work to put in our best. But when you hear comments like that, being a mum, it's difficult. It's very difficult. So what can men do? Just be more aware of what they say around females, right? Instead of making the comments or thinking about it in that light, females are here to stay in industry. We are going to be here. So how do we help one another? How do we actually change the way we think? So instead of saying, we shouldn't take a lot of females because they're going to come in here and have babies, why not look at other things like, how would you de-risk any other situation? There's insurance if you'd like to look at that. Okay, insurance that insures companies if females are out of the workspace and they need to go on maternity leave. Look at things like that. Look at more practical solutions. So for me, yes, you can have all of the facilities to support females in that industry, support new mothers. But what else can you do? Just be more aware of what you're saying and how you behave around these new mothers. And, one of the other things is when I got back to work, I was very self-conscious about how I looked, how I carried myself. And it was a difficult period for me. It was very difficult, especially with having a baby later on in my life. And there were comments made about how I looked, what I wore. And yes, I called the person out for it, but that also hit me very hard. It was a comment about a dress that I had worn. And somebody said to me, why are you wearing that curtain today?
Wow. Yeah.
And it knocked me. I didn't think that I would take it that seriously and that it would actually stay with me, but it did. So just be aware of what you say around females, especially coming into the workplace after having a baby. It's difficult for us. It really is.
Yeah. Do you need some one-on-one coaching? Do you know that theminingcoach.com offer these services as part of Kumena Consulting? Kumena means grow, and most top athletes and sport teams all have coaches to grow and become better. Why don't you reach out to us by sending us an email, and you will qualify for getting your first coaching session absolutely free. Contact us at Christo@theminingcoach.com. Terms and conditions apply. You've got this history of HR and people development that was a large part of your career up to this point. And what would you say to an HR person? Look, an HR is like mining engineering. There are different areas of specialization in HR, as an example. And with HR being such an important piece in the puzzle of mining, what would you say to a younger HR person that's in HR development or people development part of the business that you've seen up to this point that is not going to plan about their actual job versus what they are doing? And how would you recommend they do things differently or shape things differently from your experience and what you've seen in human resource development?
Yeah, I think what I would say is push aside the old way of doing things. Be the HR that is actually a bit of a maverick, but not to the extent of being destructive, but to be a maverick to the extent where you're constructive. Bring in people from all different levels. If you have budgetary constraints, bring in people from internally, the older generations. I laughed the other day. I I'm a very old generation. I work on Excel spreadsheets, and one of my colleagues said to me, we're going back to the, blast from the past sort of thing, because everything has evolved. And I just said, yeah, we build minds and cities on Excel spreadsheets. And I think you need to engage those older people with the different generations in the workplace. As an HR practitioner, go and have a look at where your majority of your generations lie. Look at your profile. Is it millennials? Is it generation Y, X? Is it baby boomers? How many have you got left? Because that tells you a story. It tells you the story of what you should be doing differently, because if you're still doing what everybody else has been doing for the last 50 years in the company, we are on the way out, particular generations. You might find in your profile that you have a greater population of millennials or other generations that think differently. I love this generation that's currently out there. I think a lot of the listeners' children are in that space. They think so differently from us.
Yes,
they are so in touch with life, and they've learned from us. They've seen us working our butts off, going to an office at 6 a.m, coming back at 6 tonight. They've seen us slogging away, and yes, we did it so that they can have the lives they have today. But they've also learned from our lives that, I don't want to be like that.
exactly.
I don't want to actually live like that. And these are the HR practitioners that are in the workplace today. Is that I always say, get those older people around the table, document the basics, make sure you get the recipe of how is it to be a good surveyor. What is the rituals around that? What is the ritual about being a good engineer? What is the meetings I must hold, and what is the safety file I must have, and what is the maintenance schedules that I must look at, and just the simple tasks that is basic, but it can lead to a major risk if you don't do that. Because every job or every profession in a mine or anywhere in any corporation has a set of rituals that is there that makes that particular profession live through the changes of time. You will find a rock engineering manager that was taught by 2 managers before, and he's doing exactly the same process. And the younger professionals need to engage. Where are we at? What is the new profile? Kids of today, and I call them kids of today because they probably always will be kids for us. They might not like it, but they are a generation of short snippets. They like to learn in short snippets. If you go and put people in front of a lot of online learning, you lose them in many ways. I've noticed that. And yet we rely very heavily on that, and we look at how do we, as HR practitioners, go with the change of time. What will make a learner actually learn better? And I mean, I've also learned over the past few years about learning on TikTok. I mean, it's literally a 45-second snippet, but compacted into that is just so much that it's a little business on its own now at the moment. You can sell anything. You can promise somebody that this product is going to make you live forever. And when you look again, all those products are sold off the shelf. That's the power of media. And how do HR practitioners actually harness that? But the starting point in everything is to get your aging, retiring, job roles and professions, bring them in and have ongoing sessions with them. Document those recipes that work. Get advice. Ask. Look at what we're doing wrong. Have a look at in a conversation. You don't have to have workshops. Let's just talk. Let's get around a round table. It's like families. Let's sit around the table and eat together again. Where did we go wrong? Now we sit in front of the TV and eat, or we eat on the run. We lose that sense of community. We lose information along the way. Is it old-fashioned to sit and have dinner together? No, that's what the older generations used to do.
Yeah.
I laugh. I laugh because, in our days, you had to be home at 5 o'clock and bathed when your father got home. I mean, imagine telling this generation, but by 6 o'clock, we were around the table eating, talking. And I'm not saying that that's what we must do, but it's definitely food for thought. So get those guys around the table. Have your round table. Get people from outside. Let them come in and add to that body of knowledge. Because you as the HR practitioner, you cannot use the same things that we did in the next 20 to 30 years of mining.
I would just tie up again to the excellence part. So the leadership role that I think is important, and in my working life, I've worked towards that, and I cannot say now that I have all the answers, but that way of trying to connect, the part that the leader sees, where we want to go, if it's the vision or if it's even in a nearby strategy, to those people that must do or execute that. So to link these two parts is in my experience quite difficult, and there's quite a disconnect sometimes. And I've asked myself a lot of times, how do you connect that? So if you look on the more technical side, it's easier that you can really, if you understand the details of what needs to be technically done. So if you look on the engineering disciplines, then you can use that to explain to somebody how they must achieve the ultimate objective. So you can really take them through that path or that storyline. And in terms of the performance of teams and an organization, it's a bit more difficult. I really find that often if you're in a leadership role, you are very isolated from the people that you actually want to be so connected to, but it's very difficult to achieve. And I think it helps if you really, lead by example. So never expect of people things that you're not willing to do yourself. But then, that you also try to take them along on that journey. So that I think is important. And from my point of view, so if I must now speak to leaders with whom I've worked, it was really helpful where they could create that purpose, that direction for where we are going. And we read it a lot in a lot of different books, a lot of podcasts, people refer to that. But on a practical side, as a leader, you really need to focus on getting that purpose to your people and also how it applies to them personally. So I could, from when I was working for the cement company, I was always, very proud about the projects that was built in Namibia, and not even all of them in Namibia, sometimes outside, where you could really, explain to somebody that what you physically see there, that construction that will stand there for 60 or 100 years, that was, possible because of what you did here, which seems far connected from that. But you don't always have, for all contexts, that opportunity to explain it in that way. But I think it remains a practical challenge how to get it done in a way where people can really make it to something that they themselves find as their purpose.
Yeah, buying into that vision, but also being very highly connected to them in their personal lives. Yeah, I love that. So I've experienced the absolute value that the diversity of thinking brings, and more specifically gender, call it along the gender line now, in terms of diversity of thinking. So there is and I'm generalizing here, but my experience, and I may be wrong, but women and men they do bring different thinking skill sets into a business. Do you think that we have moved along enough in many companies to actually value that? Do women have an equal voice at the boardroom table, as an example? So if you just talk about business improvement, and I see your mind is spinning there. But I mean, business improvement, whatever that topic may be, do women generally get an equal voice at the table, in your experience and what you've seen? Certainly I've seen they don't, but that's just my experience.
So to be brutally honest, that is actually the case. We don't get an equal voice at the boardroom table. Apart from the equal voice, I don't think we get the support either. So even if you have ideas, you pitch your ideas, it's not given the same support as a male counterpart. And I've seen it time and time again. So yes, you might have a seat at the boardroom table, you might have a voice at the boardroom table, but are you getting that support that you need? More often not. You also have to pitch your ideas a lot harder than a male counterpart. I might have to go through a few iterations before somebody actually agrees to even give me an opportunity. So it is difficult, Christo. Even if you get that seat at the boardroom, even if you get that opportunity, more often than not, you're not given the support. And, I've spoken to females in industry about this. You might be given the opportunity as a plant manager, you might be given the opportunity as a board director, you might be given the opportunity as a CEO, but are you given the support as a male counterpart would have? And more often than not, it's a no. So it's not only about opportunities, it's actually about the support given once you're given those opportunities, if that makes sense.
And the enablement and understanding that, there's, as you say, support is also enablement, but, you have to have, and I guess that's empowerment.
Exactly.
You have to have that diversity of thinking and people and genders and I love that. I love the fact that it is something that we've got a lot of work to do. We've, as an industry, and it is a tough conversation because what would you say to the male dominant leaders that feel threatened by this?
I think probably to go a step back, it should be worrisome as a leader if you find yourself in a situation where everyone is agreeing with you all the time, because that is not a sign of good leadership, I would think, because there's no way that you are right all the time. And if people are not in a position to be honest, then if I'm the person who's that leader, I should be able to look within myself to say, what is it about me or my management style that encourages this type of behavior? Like, why do people feel necessary to act in this way when they are around me? And then for the male-dominated leadership, I think there is room for everyone, and also we should never be in a situation where you do not want to create room at the table for the next person, or whether they look like you or different to you, and also especially if they are not of like mind with how you think. I think the best you get the best out of the team when there is a diverse group, and this diversity in particular should also be about diverse thinking. I think, because we don't put enough emphasis on that. We say, okay, yes, we've checked the box. We have males, we have females, we have white, we have black, etc., etc., etc. Those are just boxes. But when those people get into the room, are they able to authentically contribute to the conversation, or are they just conforming to what they already find, because either out of fear sometimes, or also maybe, and that fear might be misguided because you got into the room being who you are. So ideally, you should be continuing to operate as who you are, even though maybe there are certain levels it requires you to be a refined version of yourself. You should still be able to contribute authentically, and we don't do that. So for the male-dominated leadership, I would say let's not be fearful of incorporating diversity into at our tables. It's the only way we are going to move forward, and the benefit will be for all of us. And having people that only think like you can be detrimental to your workplace, not only in terms of morale, but also to your bottom line. Especially in the age of social media, where people can get information out quickly and almost instantaneously, your brand can be irrecoverably damaged by having a blind spot to certain issues. And that blind spot normally, especially in corporate world, coming from having a one-sided view. So it is incorporating or including everyone is good for business. So we should do it. Yes.
Love that. It's good for business. We should do it. I love that.
Talking quite well, I should say.
This is not about me, but thanks.
100%, but I was your subordinate, so most of the leadership elements would definitely come from you. But the most important one was reliability. When you promise or make a commitment that you will achieve this by this date, it's very important that you are reliable and you deliver to that quality. So being reliable is really one, and it's one of the most important ones that would set you apart. For example, if you need to be appointed, let's say for a leadership position, you're supposed to become the next GM, and you've got Sheron, who only started being reliable 3 weeks ago when Sheron heard that this position is up for recruitment. And I started doing everything right, and I'm achieving the results for the 3 weeks so that I can stand out. But yet again, you've got Johannes, for example, and Johannes has been very consistent and reliable throughout the years. It's a quick decision, an easy decision to make, even though Sheron is sticking out, and you can clearly see it's for the last 3 weeks, but Johannes has been doing it for as long as you know Johannes. It's an easy pick. You will pick Johannes for that role. So for you to be able to be selected for a role or to stand out, reliability is one important one. And the second one that I'll pick is engaging with impact. So again, it draws back to my first example that I made. As a leader, you are supposed to create a vision that inspires your subordinates to follow. So if you are that type of leader, and I can share a few examples on how I've done it exceptionally well throughout the years. When I took over the MRM section, we were quite clear what we wanted to achieve, and we wanted to achieve 2 million tons of added resources to our mineral resource. And the whole team bought into this vision, and commitments were made, and everybody committed to, yes, Sheron, we want to ensure that as a team we succeed. And we actually exceeded that, getting about 2.5 million tons of resources added that year.
Wow.
So again, as a leader, creating that vision that inspires your subordinates to follow and work towards the value addition, that's an important one. And a third one, it's actually, I would say that they weigh more or less the same, carry the same weight. So I'll add another one. I know you only wanted 3, but there is the ability to adapt. It's a very important one.
Yes.
Because working for the mining company that I work for currently, we've had a couple of changes in terms of major shareholders changes, and each company came in with their own strategy, and we needed to adapt, otherwise you would be left out. It included small decisions like changing the software package. And if you were good at your previous software and you didn't want to change, you would be left out because nobody will use that software anymore. And the information that you generate might not be compatible with the other softwares. So that's another important one. And the fourth one is deciding with conviction, speed and conviction. That's a very important one. So you need to decide. I can share another, you need to be decisive. You need to know that you have to make the decision. A decision made now may be, it's definitely better than a decision not taken at all.
Yes.
So for example, I worked so hard for an understudy program to have this GM role. And a month within this role, unfortunately, the majority shareholder filed for creditors protection. And a lot of things came into my mind, like, what do I do? Do I hop and get another job? Because that was the easiest. Or what do I do? I was left with employees that were very worried, a community that was extremely inspired by the RP2, our expansion project. And then all of a sudden, the expansion project was canceled and we had to put a lot of things at hold, and the community was very worried as well. And what made the difference is just my ability to decide that I am going to stay. I am going to ensure that my managers stay as well and create that short-term vision that everybody works towards to. And I should tell you that regardless of all the challenges the company was facing, we managed to have a record annual production.
That's amazing. The Mining Coach is part of Kumena Consulting. If your company is in need of technical study support, due diligence studies, business improvement projects, or business and senior leadership coaching, why don't you contact us directly by clicking on the show notes and following the links that will connect you to us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy your mining. Cheers.